This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. Another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, where we break down districts 5 and 6 week in, week out. Brandon Baney, joined by Sean Kane. You might notice maybe I sound a little differently if you're tuning in this week. All of my podcast gear that I normally use was stripped for parts. No, I'm just kidding. I did have to take my podcast gear, though, and give it to somebody to use during an actual broadcast on IdahoSports.com. I don't know if you heard this or not, Sean, but last week during the opening round of the football playoffs, we did 22 of the 29 possible first-round playoff games, which is pretty remarkable.
Unreal. Just an unreal amount of games. It was a busy night, huh?
Yes, and there's just as many quarterfinal games, 24 quarterfinal matchups taking place around the state of Idaho. We are currently projected to broadcast 18 of 24. Again, that's pretty good for a small Idaho business like IdahoSports.com. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, football wasn't the only thing going on. There was cross country action to talk about as well. So let's start with cross country. It all took place up in Lewiston, where we had a lot of records set, especially at the 5A level. In terms of, 5A highlights, it really was, Post Falls, Rocky Mountain, Boise. They kind of had all of the accolades there. At the 4A competition, though, Sean, no surprise. Neela Roberts of Skyline. She's a junior. She won the 4A state title in both her freshman and sophomore years. She wins again in her junior season. She is 3 for 3 in cross-country titles. I mean, we run out of things to say about her because she's so phenomenal, but Neela Roberts does it again.
Yeah, no surprise there. The favorite going in, and she did really well. And we talked about this at the end of last year. Just East Idaho excels in the distant running. Man, when it comes to those 800s and cross country, East Idaho is a little better than some of the other places. I don't want to go crazy, but because not only did we win girls, Matthew Thomas of Blackfoot also was the individual champion for boys in 4A. So 2 teams from the same conference in East Idaho bringing back the number 1 spots.
Yeah, and both of those outstanding in their own way. So Neela Roberts now with 3 state titles in a row. She is just one of 8 runners all time since cross country became an official IHSAA sport in 1974 to win 3 individual titles. So one of 8. Think about that rare company.
It's there's not many, and you know what you see a lot of times is they win it. The students win it when they're younger, and then have a harder time winning it when they're older because usually freshmen can just run for days. So to continue that up as you go become an upperclassman is just a phenomenal feat.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Matt Thomas, the great runner from Blackfoot. That was a pretty interesting, and really to wrap up the 4A girls side, Neela's Skyline teammate Marina Renna was pushing her the whole way, as was Bailey Bird of Pocatello. So East Idaho runners doing really well on the girls' side. And then, Matt Thomas of Blackfoot runs a sub-15 time, 14:47.61. That's a personal best, which is breaking 15 minutes is unheard of.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And I didn't want to get too far away from girls because also Preston won the girls' title overall too. So like I said, East Idaho did pretty well as far as running long distances this fall.
Yeah, you're correct. So the Preston girls did win the team title and won it in pretty dominant fashion, like we thought they would.
Yeah.
Matt Thomas runs the sub-15 time. And then when we get down to the 3A runners, Sugar-Salem comes out and competes pretty well. Coming in, Brett Hill, the veteran coach, was, kind of like, we could contend, but, there's a lot of good teams out there. And then Sugar-Salem ends up winning again.
Yeah, no surprise there. And they have a pretty cool tradition. If you win, you have to jump into Lake Coeur d'Alene. And so I believe that coach, there was a video of him jumping into the lake. So it was a little chilly.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and share that, show it up here on the screen. This is from the Sugar-Salem XC Instagram account.
You know me, I'm always after finding these little things. So
definitely. So let's pull this up. This is going to be okay. So here's the video. This is a tradition for coaches to jump in Lake Coeur d'Alene when a team wins in the North.
And he doesn't just jump in; he gives them a little backflip action. Boom.
So there you go. He did a backflip into Lake Coeur d'Alene. It's a tradition when they win a title up north for the coach to do that jump into the freezing cold water. So Brett Hill, by the way, from Sugar-Salem, that is his 51st career title in both track and field and cross country, which again is just remarkable.
Unreal.
Yeah, pretty crazy to think about. So congratulations to Sugar-Salem for winning on the boys side. So pretty impressive stuff there at the 3A level. And then at the 2A level, we didn't have any team titles there, but or actually we did. Sorry.
We did for girls.
Yes,
Soda
yes,
Springs,
yes.
And they've won it like probably 15 or 20 times too. They're up there, and I believe one of their coaches won like 10 years in a row or something. It was unreal.
Yeah, so Soda has now won 15 girls cross-country state championships. They took second place the past 2 years. They're back on top of the perch. So congratulations to the Cardinal girls as well, winning the 2A title for Soda Springs. So that's and if you want to see everything that happened in state cross-country, Marlo Herford had a great recap of everything that happened at state over the weekend. It's on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. All right, let's move on to volleyball where, hey, we've been talking about it all year. Madison, your 5A volleyball champs. We talked about Skyview moving down to 4A, which kind of opened this void, and the Madison Bobcats take advantage. They defeat Timberline. Timberline kind of got on a hot streak at the end there and got on a Cinderella run, but Madison ends up taking first place. Congrats to the Bobcats. Sorry about that, Sean. I lost my headphone audio for a second there, so let me get everything plugged back in. Go ahead and talk for me. Oh, man, I can't hear you at all. This is going to be really interesting podcasting. Okay, I'm sure you said some really insightful stuff. Let's move on to what happened in the 4A ranks where Skyview was your champion, but Century came through and battled back and got third place. Not bad for the number 7 seed overall, according to Max Preps. Congrats to the Diamondbacks for taking third. Hey, talk again for me, Sean.
Hello?
Yes. Okay, I can hear you again finally.
Okay.
I have no idea.
I was just saying Columbia took a set from Skyview, and it was the only team in Idaho to take a set from Skyview all year, or maybe in a couple of years or something. But yeah, Century did a really good job. I thought Century's rating wasn't a good rep of them, and that's where it always kind of makes me wonder about Max Preps, because Century played all these really, really good teams, and they didn't beat them, and they didn't have a great record, but they played Rigby, they played Madison, they played Thunder Ridge, they played Highland, they played a lot of bigger schools, and I don't know how, it didn't help their rating, but they did a good job because Canyon Ridge hadn't lost. They'd only lost 2 matches, I think, the whole year. No, 1 match.
Yeah.
1 match all year until that first round. That was a 5-setter. And it was just a great match.
Yeah, let's jump down to 2A volleyball, where Westside and Malad played for like the 50 millionth time in the opening round at State 2A. Malad won that game. So Westside got bumped to the losers bracket right away and battled all the way back, Sean, to get back to the championship where they fell to Melba. But congratulations to Westside for battling all the way back and taking second place. That's incredible.
Yeah, and Malad had to play Malad had to play in a play-in game, and then Westside, and they kept just saying how they kept playing, so many different times, but kind of crazy how they end up playing 2 times just at state. So, and then they played a bunch during the year. Wow, just amazing.
Yeah, I think they played 3 times at districts, twice in the regular season, twice at state. Why not? So
they're really familiar.
Yes, definitely. So Westside took second, and Ryrie took third place. Congratulations to the Bulldogs from Ryrie, McKinley Bond and company. Really good team up there from Ryrie, and they ended up taking third. So congrats to the Bulldogs as well. Okay, and then 1AD2. It was this big showdown. Rockland, Horseshoe Bend. Horseshoe Bend ends up winning, but that doesn't take anything away from what was a fantastic season by Rockland and head coach Suzanne Wilson. Horseshoe Bend's really good, good enough to compete against 4A schools. Good. So yeah. Rockland's got no shame.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So congratulations to Rockland on a very outstanding season. They take second place at the 1A D2 meet. All right. You ready to talk football, Sean?
There's football going on?
Right.
Falls are for Friday.
That's right. Hey, let's start in the 4A classification. I feel like that's where the most exciting game involving a team from East Idaho took place. And of course, it's the game that we were at on Friday night, Pocatello and Lakeland. Pocatello leads this game 17-14 at halftime, but really Lakeland jumped out to a 14-3 lead, Sean, and then Riken Echohawk scores on a 7-yard touchdown run. Pokey's lining up for the extra point. Lakeland gets called for running into the kicker, so Pokey gets to kick off from Lakeland's 45, and this was a move that you loved during the broadcast, Sean.
Yeah.
Head coach Dave Spillett decides to go for the onside kick and gets it.
Yeah, the kicker, Keller, kicks it to himself, picks it up, and gets it. And I mean, really, that was kind of the game, because they go down, get a field goal, and yeah, and then the big story of that game too is Lakeland couldn't hold on to the ball, 3 fumbles, and just kind of were their own worst enemy, not only with the fumbles, but they had a lot of penalties in the red zone as well.
Yeah, they had some drives that they just came up short on. So yeah, so Pokey's down 14-3. Echohawk gets the touchdown. They're 14-10. They get the onside kick. Just before halftime, Hunter May finds Crew Hales for a 25-yard touchdown, and that's where 17-14 at halftime. The only points that came in the second half were very early on in the third quarter. Garrett Keller hit a little chip shot field goal, and that gave Pokey the 2014 lead they needed. You mentioned Lakeland fumbled the ball 3 times. Once they were marching. They were inside the 5, and John Cornish fumbles at the 2-yard line for Lakeland, and Pocatello recovers. Otherwise, Lakeland probably scores there and takes a 1-point lead. So Pocatello's defense came up with some huge takeaways. Crew Hales had one of the fumble recoveries. He was our IdahoSports.com player of the game because of that and his receiving touchdown. And so for Pocatello, congratulations. An ugly win, but a win for the Thunder. Now the test a little more difficult this week, Sean. They've got to go to number 1 seeded Bishop Kelly. Now, Pocatello beat BK in the quarterfinals a year ago. The difference was that game was in Holt Arena. This one will be at BK Friday night.
Yeah, and I went and watched some. I hadn't watched any BK, and I went and watched some BK this week. And man, that's a good team. And they've got years and years of coaching experience. They're usually one of the best coached teams. I'm sure it's a rematch Bishop Kelly's looking for. I'm not sure if it's the rematch Pocatello's looking for. It's going to be a tough game to go up there and beat this BK team that runs the ball, I would say, as good as any football team in Idaho, period.
Yeah, second week in a row. Lakeland was a run-heavy team. Bishop Kelly is going to be a run-heavy team as well. So Pocatello's got to take advantage of the possessions that it gets because it could be another low possession type game. The second biggest story from 4A, and maybe the second biggest story, from East Idaho football in the opening round, was Shelley going on the road and just blasting Emmett. Shelley goes and wins 37-13. Nate Nelson was the IdahoSports.com player of the game. He scored on 3 short QB sneaks. They also had, Riker Klinger scored a touchdown on the ground. Nelson threw a touchdown pass to Michael Clegg. And we've talked about this all year, Sean. Shelley is a team that is better than their record indicates. They've been in some close losses. They played a very difficult schedule. And it seems like it's coming together at the right time for Coach Josh Wells and the Russets.
Yeah, I was going to say Josh Wells has got that team playing at the right times, I think, at the right moments. And when you have that kind of combination when it comes to playoff time, anything can happen. But like I said, I was kind of surprised by that scoreline too. I think, we kind of thought it was going to be a hard game, but, Shelley traveled. Didn't they travel to Boise and play a game this year too? So Shelley's kind of already had that kind of planned in and had that kind of scenario. They went and traveled and played. So, I didn't think about that until after, but that, that was a good idea for them to have that experience. And I think it paid off because they were able to go all the way up to Emmett and come home with a big victory.
Yeah, they went all the way to Albertson Stadium at BSU, Boise State, early on in the season to play Star Valley, Wyoming. So you're right, that really did pay dividends.
But now they're going to go really far.
Yeah, now they got to go all the way up north to Sandpoint. This is a rematch of the quarterfinal round last year, where Shelley kind of pushed Sandpoint for a half, and then the Bulldogs kind of wore out the Russets as the game went on. Of course, Sandpoint has a great defense, and they can run the ball too. But if Shelley can take care of the football, I think they've got a chance.
Yeah, I think again it's like a possession, right? If Shelley has more possessions and controls the clock and limits what Sandpoint can do as far as having the ball in offense, I think they can be really in any game, just the way they play.
Yeah, definitely. And then we had rematch central from District 6. You had Hillcrest and Bonneville meeting up again, Hillcrest and Blackfoot, and then Bonneville and Skyline. So Hillcrest, Blackfoot, this was interesting, Sean. They were playing, and midway through the second quarter, it's like 7-3 Blackfoot, kind of a tight game. And then in a 3-minute span, Jackson Grimmett hits Javante King for a 7-yard touchdown. Hillcrest gets the ball. So then they're up 14-3. Hillcrest gets the ball. Peyton King drops back the pass. He gets sacked by Trayden Henderson, fumbles the football. Steven Sanders recovers the fumble for Blackfoot. That leads to a 9-yard touchdown run by Jackson Grimmett, 21-3 Blackfoot. Then the Broncos get an onside kick and recover it. And then Grimmett hits King again for a 10-yard touchdown. And like 3 minutes later, it went from 7-3 Blackfoot to 28-3 Blackfoot. And it was pretty much over at that point.
Yeah, just kind of interesting game because we talked about it. I wouldn't want to play Hillcrest in the playoffs, and they were kind of holding Blackfoot. But what do you do when you score that many points in 3 minutes? I don't think you got a game plan for that. Jeez, that's tough.
Yeah, and that's what makes Blackfoot so frustrating is that they have that potential, right? And they don't always, the potential isn't always realized, but here we are again in the playoffs and Blackfoot playing their best football when it matters most. They did this last year where they had kind of an up and down regular season, and then they got all the way to the semifinals. Certainly could be in the cards again, especially because now, Sean, Blackfoot coming off that victory over Hillcrest 35-17. They traveled to Minico on Friday night. Sean, this is a game that you're going to be at along with Scott Burton on IdahoSports.com. And this is a Minico team that's a little vulnerable. I mean, they needed overtime to escape Valley View 20-14 in a game in which Valley View was missing its best player.
Yeah, I went back and watched that game, and because I couldn't believe that score line. I remember being like it was going to overtime, and yeah, it was kind of interesting. But Valley View's got Lane Coffin. He used to coach at, he used to coach at Century. They've got a really good staff. A lot of the Century staff still talk to him, and they had a good game plan. They talked to them about playing Minico, and so they had a good game plan going in there, and they almost got it. But the really interesting thing about that game, it's the overtime. It's Minico scored. It's Valley View turned with the ball, and the Valley View quarterback just gets hammered, sacked, and the backup quarterback comes in for the last play of the game and has the pass to his receiver, but it's just out of bounds. And so that was a crazy events at the end of that game. But yeah, I kind of thought Minico would roll in that game, but Minico had the demons of losing to Valley View last year, and we've been to Minico. It's an interesting place to play, and I think that's good it'll be home for them. But both these teams, I don't know. Sometimes you would say both these teams could be in the championship, and then sometimes you're kind of like, I don't know. So it should be an interesting game. I think it's going to be a very defensive versus offensive game. Minico has a great linebacking core, and their defense is outstanding and really can limit that passing attacks. And we know Blackfoot with Javante King has that passing attack. So I think it's going to be a big defensive offensive battle.
Yeah, whoever wins in the trenches, I think, wins this game because Minico, their weakness, quote unquote, defensively is the secondary, and we know Blackfoot's got the receivers. Can the O-line give Jackson Grimmin enough time against that front seven of Minico? And then conversely, we know Minico loves to pound the ball in that wing tee. Can Blackfoot's front seven really stop the run and force Minico to pass more than they would like to? Whoever wins the battle of the trenches, I think, wins this game, and it will be close. You are correct. And then, the game that had the least amount of drama was Skyline hosting Bonneville Friday night in Holt Arena. Bonneville, of course, had that epic 16-13 win over Skyline in the regular season. Best to, what do they say? Don't poke the bear, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it last week. We knew it's hard to beat a team like Skyline twice. I think if you get one win over them in the course of a season, you're pretty fortunate. They're the defending champions for a reason. They know what it takes in playoff football.
Yeah, so Skyline wins 42-0. Lachlan Hackey was the IdahoSports.com player of the game, 11 of 12 passing. He only missed on one pass, 158 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then he had 76 yards rushing as well. Skyline playing their best football at the right time. They are back in Holt Arena on Saturday at 4:00. They will host Twin Falls. And I like Skyline in that matchup. Sean, could we see an all East Idaho Final Four?
Maybe. I mean, the odds are in our favor. I mean, with the amount of numbers, we've got the most teams, really, right? I mean,
all 4 would have to win, right? Pokey, yeah. Blackfoot, Skyline.
No one's playing each other, so
right, and Shelley. So Pokey will have the most difficult time, I think, but I don't know. Yeah, I've seen crazier things before. So
yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like Bishop Kelly, would win last year against Pocatello, and Pocatello came out with a great game plan and was able to take down Bishop Kelly. So I wouldn't put it past them. They've played I think, like in the first or second round of the playoffs, like the last 3 or 4 years. So they're pretty familiar with playing each other in the playoffs.
Yeah. All right, let's jump up to 5A now. Let's talk about Rigby was hosting Owyhee. The Trojans get a 49-14 victory. Luke Flowers had 312 yards and 5 touchdowns. Our IdahoSports.com player of the game was Cade Steffler, who hauled in 2 of those touchdowns from Flowers. Cohen Peck, Brady Packer, Brevin Larson also caught touchdowns for Rigby. We talked about the Trojans. Owyhee was walking into the lion's den, so to speak, and now Rigby gets a pretty interesting matchup. They've got to hit the road to take on Eagle, a Mustangs team that had a bye last week. I'll be honest, I kind of like Rigby in this matchup, despite them being the road team.
Yeah, I think Eagle has been better in some different years, and I think this Rigby team is just really, really good at all facets of the game. And I don't think traveling really makes a difference to them, but I know Rigby's always got a kind of a chip on their shoulder against Eagle, right, from that championship game a couple years ago. So Coach Armando is going to be ready for that game, I bet you.
Yeah, and Eagles defense has been leaky at times this year, and I think Rigby's offense can really exploit that. So I like the Trojans to go on the road and beat Eagle. And then Highland gets the first round bye. They're inside Holt Arena Friday night at 5:30. They will host Mountain View, after losing to Nampa in the regular season, shut out the Bulldogs 44-0 last Friday night. I still like Highland here. Mountain View's offense has had a hard time getting points despite that 44-0 win last week. That was really the first time they've really broken out. Highland's defense is so strong, and I like the Rams inside Holt.
Yeah, I'm definitely the Rams in the Holt Arena. Mountain View's just kind of not. It's kind of been a weird team this year, I kind of think, and I like Highland there as well.
Yeah, so good luck to the Rams on Friday night. Let's go to 3A football, where we had Teton played Marsh Valley Friday night. Now, this was a wild game in the regular season these two played, and Teton escaped 42-41. Wild game, went down to the wire. This time, Teton's like, all right, let's make it a little easier on ourselves. They win 56-13. Jack Nelson, 14 of 20, 295 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also had 73 yards rushing on just 6 carries. Bradley Belknap led Marsh Valley as he has all year, had a touchdown pass and a touchdown run. So for Marsh Valley, their season comes to an end. And for Teton just keeps on 7-2.
And they get Buell, which I think that's probably one of the most interesting matchups in the second round for sure is that Teton Buell, because I get a lot of questions because they're like, you went and saw Teton, and I'm like, yeah, and they're like, what's with Teton? Because they're kind of all over the place with kind of their outcomes of their games, and because everyone was kind of surprised they kind of laid down the wood on Marsh Valley, and I just think Teton is got a lot of just kind of grit, and they can go in and win a game when the chips are down, I think.
Yeah, Buell, name of the game for them is defense. Certainly they won 12-6 in their playoff opener last week. And Teton, of course, has that explosive offense. I don't know. My gut is telling me to lean Buell, not for any particular reason. Teton fans are going to let me have it, which is fine. I'm good with that. This is a close game, though. I think it really could go either way. But for some reason, my gut is telling me to lean Buell. South Fremont played Kimberly on Saturday. This was a Kimberly offense they have an offense kind of like Teton's, where, it's pretty routine. They're putting up 40, even 50 points in a game. And South Fremont said, yeah, we're going to shut that down. And they get a 48-14 win. It was pretty impressive. Bryce Johnson, he's just a sophomore quarterback for South Fremont. I don't know if people have realized that or not, but he's a young guy.
Yeah.
He was the IdahoSports.com player of the game. He had a pair of short touchdown runs, also threw a touchdown to Colby Clark. Hadley Hill had 2 touchdowns. Hunter Hobbs had a touchdown. And Preston Stoddard, I don't know how many kicks he's taken back for touchdowns. It's at least 3. He returned a kickoff 90 yards for a touchdown for South Fremont in the win as well. So our suspicions are confirmed. East Idaho had a lot of really good 3A football teams this year.
Yeah, there's been no doubt, right? And then the elephant in the room, right? Sugar-Salem, just kind of, the shark in the water, and I think in Homedale and Weiser are good teams too. But man, the bracket sure set up well, I think, for Sugar-Salem.
Yes. So South Fremont wins. They now have to hit the road to play Homedale Friday night in Homedale at 7:00. That will be a tall order for the Cougars. Homedale, of course, has Jackson Dines at quarterback, Trenton Fisher, the running back. That's a really tough 1-2 combo to stop. They've always got good offensive linemen. But we talked about this a couple weeks ago. In terms of game planning, I've had several people tell me nobody's better at crafting a game plan than Chad Hill, the head coach at South Fremont. So I'd be very interested to see what kind of game plan he kind of comes up with to try and shut down Homedale, so to speak. And then you mentioned Sugar-Salem. They are going to host, they had a bye. They are going to host Fruitland on Friday night at Madison High School at 6 p.m. Fruitland went to Snake River and quote unquote upset the Panthers by a final score of 27-14. This is one that I had predicted. Snake River to me was a team that was good, but not necessarily great. And I thought Fruitland got better competition this year overall, playing with Homedale and Weiser. Yeah. And I thought Fruitland had a pretty decent shot. Snake River season comes to an end with a 6-3 record. Danny Ray threw 2 touchdown passes in the loss. So for Snake River, not able to defend their home field, but still a nice season.
Yep, definitely.
And then all those nice things I said about Fruitland doesn't matter against Sugar. They're going down.
I mean, I just don't. Yeah, you just they're hitting it on all parts. The defense, the offense. It's going to be a hard. You're going to have to. The only one who I see beating Sugar is maybe Sugar, right? If they have something internally go wrong or just have a bad day, but you're going to have to be ready to go to take them down.
Yeah. 2A football, we talked about. This was going to be the most competitive, postseason field, I thought. And then he had 3 blowouts. Westside beats Coal Valley 61-14. Aberdeen beats St. Mary's 52-8. North Fremont beats Soda Springs 60-30. Westside, 463 yards of total offense. They've got this 3-headed monster in the backfield. Parker Moser, Crusage, Easton Shirtliff. Each of them scored 3 times in that win over Coal Valley Christian. Pirates are 8-1. They are, quote unquote, the visiting team Friday night inside Holt Arena as they take on Declo. That will be that's a game Saturday inside Holt Arena at 11 a.m. It's the first game of the day on Saturday. I like Westside in that matchup over Declo.
Oh yeah, Westside is. I think everyone. I don't know. Forgot, but maybe I don't know if you really forget Westside, but that's a really good team, and they'll be good.
Yeah, they'll be just fine. Aberdeen beats St. Mary's 52-8. Brody Beck was the IdahoSports.com player of the game, threw 3 touchdown passes, rushed for 2 more scores. Marshall Elliott had a pick 6 for Aberdeen on defense. The Tigers are 6-3. They're rolling. They will travel to Melba Friday night, 6:00. This is 2 teams that love to run the football. This game is starting at 6. It could be over by 7:30, Sean.
We say that, but then it never does. But
right.
I mean, Aberdeen is just having a phenomenal season, and I don't know a ton about Melba, so I'm going to go with Aberdeen.
Melba pretty routinely puts up 400 plus rushing yards per game. Cash Buse is their quarterback. He's usually pretty efficient. Gabe Schaefer is their top running back. The question I have is what kind of competition did Melba see this year, right? The District 3 was a little weaker this year. We all know that because they're the only team left from District 3. Aberdeen's more battle tested. So
you got Westside, you got Bear Lake, and then
they played North Fremont.
Fremont. That's the matchup I'm looking at. North Fremont and Firth. That's going to be a game, I think.
Yes. So Aberdeen, it wouldn't surprise me if Aberdeen goes on the road to beat Melba, especially if they can get a takeaway or 2 on defense. I don't know what kind of competition Melba has played this year. And I know what Aberdeen has played. And so I do kind of like the Tigers on the road there. And then, yes. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, at the end of the day, Aberdeen has probably played whoever wins the championship pretty close during the regular season. I'd feel confident saying that.
They could win the championship themselves.
Yes.
Right? Certainly. Okay, and then let's talk about this. North Fremont beats Soda 60-30. They did their thing on the ground. I mean, very first play, Carson Packer takes it 60 yards for a touchdown. He had 246 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. Angel Romero had 107 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Our IdahoSports.com player of the game was Hank Richardson. He's a big 6'4", 230, just jackhammer. 5 sacks, and he had a 35-yard scoop and score, fumble return for a touchdown. That's awesome, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's I like always the kind of not the normal player of the games. I like the kickers and the linemen and things like that. I like that, so that's great.
Yeah, and yet, Soda did hang tough for a half. Trey Stevens had 3 touchdown passes, ran for a 4th score for the Cardinals. So Soda Springs, despite that 3-7 record, had a very good season in what was a very competitive conference. So
yeah, they had one of the hardest schedules. Soda Springs, if they gave out like the most improved or I don't know, some sort of award like that, that would be the team that would come to mind immediately for me.
Definitely. And so you've got this matchup Friday night in Holt Arena, 8:15. This will be the late game Friday night. North Fremont taking on Firth. Firth, of course, won the regular season matchup. I kind of like North Fremont in the rematch. It's hard to beat the same team twice in one year. I don't know. Am I crazy, Sean?
Man, The reason I would like Firth is I really like their quarterback, and I feel like when the game kind of gets crazy and maybe it's close and you have some intangibles, I really like Firth's quarterback. Back,
Gage Vasquez.
yeah, yep, I really like him. He's just kind of a crafty guy, so I'm kind of leaning towards Firth just because I like him, but that's not really a great reason. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I mean, they're both so evenly matched. I mean, that is going to be the game of the week, I think, in the entire state, in my opinion, Firth and North Fremont. And then you got Bear Lake just hanging out as the number 1 overall seed. They had a bye. They're going to host Kellogg Friday night in Bear Lake at 6 o'clock. They're going to make Kellogg try to bring that passing attack to the cold outside. I like Bear Lake here, personally.
Yeah. Bear Lake. What I like is Bear Lake is really good at running, but they can throw the ball when they need to. And I think that makes just kind of the world of difference in some of these games. If most of these teams, I won't say most, all these teams have really good running games. And if you're able to kind of get those passes in there, man, you're dangerous.
Maybe the most underrated 2A player, Bryson Crane for Bear Lake. Great receiver, tall, makes all the tough catches. Nobody ever talks about him. Bryson Crane is phenomenal for Bear Lake. All right, let's talk about 8-man football. We had Butte County host Lapwai on Saturday. They won pretty easily, 72-28. Trayton Allen was the IdahoSports.com player of the game. He rushed for 157 yards and 3 touchdowns. Butte County as a team rushed for 438 yards, so they looked good. They have to hit the road to play Kamiah on Friday night in Kamiah, a long trip, but I kind of like Butte County here.
Yeah, Butte County is like a 6th seed. I think we kind of talked about, they're kind of like, they've just kind of had that season where you just kind of feel like they're going to make some noise and kind of just come up with something that you weren't expecting. Yeah.
And then Grace had the first round bye. They are now going to host Raft River in Holt Arena on Saturday night at 6:30. This will be the late game Saturday night in Holt Arena. And I Grace fans are going to hate me for this, but I saw Raft River in person last week, and they are finally healthy. They had been missing some key players. They got those guys back, and Raft River at full strength is a tough team to contend with. They've been to the championship 2 years in a row. I like Raft River based upon what I saw with my eyes last week. Grace is going to have to play really well to get that win.
Yeah, I would agree. Raft River, like you said, I remember them last year, and they're just a really good team. So that'll be a tough. Their ranking number 7 is very deceiving to me for Raft River. So that's not a 7. That's like a 3 or a 2 typically normally in the playoffs. So
definitely. So yeah, Grace fans are going to rake me over the coals. Who else have I upset this week? In fact, Teton. I'll come back and wear it if I'm wrong about all this stuff, of course. Okay, and then 1A D2 football. You had Water Springs in action against Camas County. The Warriors fall 66-32. Drew Plocker still did his thing where, he had 222 yards, 3 touchdowns passing, rushed for 146 yards as well. But the Warriors just didn't have the firepower to keep up with Camas County, so their season comes to an end. And then you've got Rockland. They had the first round bye, and now they've got a very difficult quarterfinal matchup with Dietrich. This will be inside Holt Arena on Saturday afternoon. I kind of like Dietrich in this matchup. Rockland is going to have to score a ton of points to try and keep up with this Blue Devils offense.
Yeah, it's gonna if it's Dietrich's, it's gonna be like a shootout, right? So if you don't keep up, it's hard to get stops. I mean, I think if Rockland come up with some stops and keep them Dietrich from scoring, they might be in it. But can you come up with those stops?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. Nonetheless, excuse me. And if you want to see all the games that we're broadcasting this weekend on IdahoSports.com, just click on the Game Streams tab on the homepage. That'll show you the full broadcast schedule. All right, Sean, we did it. We got through all of that fall sports activity. From here on out, it's just going to be, we'll talk swimming next week, of course, but then, it's football. From there until we get into winter sports season.
So. Little basketball, little wrestling.
Yeah,
they did have girls basketball tryouts started this week, so that's all rolling.
Not ready for it, but here we are. So all right, Sean, have fun Friday night covering Blackfoot in Minico. Should be a great game, and I can't wait to tune in and see it. So
yeah. I'll try to not make any mistakes since you didn't want to be with me this week. So that's what the viewers need to know. Brandon is sick of me being at his side, so they've sent me to the Magic Valley. Sorry, East Idaho. But Blackfoot's there, so I'm representing that.
That's the biggest reason I sent you, was to have a little East Idaho perspective on the broadcast.
I'm just joking. But we went to Minico. I think it's one of the best games, I think, in 4A for sure. Yeah, it'll be good. I'm excited to see what happens there for sure.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. So, all right, thanks for tuning into the East Idaho Prepcast, everybody. For Sean Kane, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.